Hello, in this video we're going to talk about rule-based automation in the Raven Live video switching platform. So let's just jump into that. So I pulled up my configuration in Raven and I've gone to the Sunday morning production. And as you can see here, I have several rules defined, 6 rules to be exact. I've created rules to switch automatically between 3 different scenes. That's why I need 6 rules, because I need rules that can go from any one of those scenes to either of the other 2 scenes. So in this case, the 3 scenes that I'm automatically switching between would be the wide shot only scene, the worship scene, and the sermon scene. Now I'll show you how I do that. So let's look at the worship to wide rule first, and I'm going to go to the details on that. Now in this particular case, I'm pretending that this ProPresenter audio input, which I've already defined on my input audio tab, I'm going to pretend that that's a mix of instruments or voices from my mixer, my audio mixer, that is going into Raven somehow, whether it's coming in via NDI or coming in through a Pro, ASIO interface or something of that nature. I'm just pretending this feed from ProPresenter is the band playing, right? So what I want is when Raven is on the worship scene and the band stops playing, then I want to automatically switch to the wide shot. So I've created the scene for the wide shot only, put 1 camera in it, and now I'm creating this rule. So Raven is going to listen to this input, the ProPresenter audio input, and it's going to listen for silence or the signal to be below the threshold that I define. So that's why on loud is not enabled. In other words, I'm wanting Raven to key off of the signal being below this threshold. And the volume here is -60, so that's 60 decibels below 0 dB full scale digital. So in other words, after the tail of the band fades out at the end, the signal on that particular audio input is going to drop below -60 decibels. And if it stays that way for at least 2 seconds, then Raven will switch automatically from the worship scene to the wide shot scene. Okay, so that's all that rule does. Now I'm going to look at the other worship to rule, and that's worship to sermon. We're going to look at how that works. Now I've set up another audio input already, and it's this little OBS bot camera, and it has a little built-in microphone in it. I'm just pretending that that's an audio feed coming from the mixer that is probably a subgroup of maybe handheld microphones or lavalier microphones or earset microphones that a speaker or pastor would give or use at a church, or maybe a host or an MC for an event. When they start speaking, the signal is going from the audio mixer into Raven, again through a different interface, whatever of the interfaces that Raven supports, and we've defined that as an input. But what I want Raven to key off of now is on loud, which means if the signal is above the threshold that I define. So I've defined a threshold of -25 dB, so that's 25 dB below 0 dB full scale again, for a period of 1 second, then switch automatically from the worship scene to the sermon scene. So those are the 2 rules that I've created to tell Raven how to switch scenes automatically away from the worship scene. And I'm going to do similar things in creating rules to switch from the wide shot only to the sermon scene, wide shot only to worship scene, and then sermon to wide and sermon to worship. I'm going to do very similar things there. We'll just glance at those quickly. Again, we're listening to that kind of sermon audio feed for it to be over -35 for 2 seconds, then switch from the wide shot to the sermon, wide to worship. We're listening to that music feed to be louder than -35 dB for 1 second, then we're going to switch from wide shot to worship, so on and so forth. Sermon to worship, similar deal. So we can define all of these thresholds independently. Now, let's see how these rules actually work in real time. So let's go ahead and start up Raven. Switch over to the Live Controller tab. And here we see the worship scene is active. Now, at the moment, I do have audio coming in on that feed, this one right here, this ProPresenter interface. And if we actually look at the input details, we can see, oh, hey, it's, around -12, -16, somewhere in there. So because of the rules that I have defined here that are enabled, it's going to stay on the worship scene because it's receiving audio on that feed and it's over the threshold that I've defined. Now I'm going to go stop that audio coming out of ProPresenter. I'm going to pop over there real quick and then we'll see what happens. Okay, I just stopped the audio. So now the signal is now below the threshold, and you'll notice right away, Raven switched to wide shot only. It did that automatically. So it didn't require me to do anything with Raven in order to get it to switch scenes, which is so cool because now you don't have to have an operator running your video mixer, and that's the whole point of Raven. So now I'm going to start the audio back up and we'll see what happens. Okay, the band is playing again. There's audio again, and lo and behold, Raven switches back to the worship scene. Fantastic. All right, the band's going to stop again. The song's done. All right, the song is done, and sure enough, Raven switches to the wide shot. Well, now I'm going to tap on this microphone, pretend like it's someone speaking, and we'll see what happens here. Oh, notice, sure enough, Raven switched to the sermon scene, which, as I had set up, detects motion on the presentation feed, and since there is motion on that, it's switching to it. So I'm going to stop tapping that microphone, and we're going to see how long it takes Raven to switch back. So at this point, the sound level is already low, below the threshold that we've defined, and I've got a little bit relaxed timing on this particular cutback, but what we'll see is that eventually we're going to fade automatically from the sermon scene back to the wide shot only scene. So we'll see that here in a little bit. And there it is. So again, I had really relaxed timing on that. I wanted it to stay on the sermon scene for a while longer, just in case, because I didn't want it switching off of that scene too quickly if, say, the pastor or the speaker took a long pause. Say he muted his microphone to cough for a few seconds or something. I didn't want it to switch to the wide shot only. Now you notice Raven has already switched back to the worship scene. Why is that? Well, it's because ProPresenter got to the first slide in this loop again, so it started playing the audio. And again, Raven did exactly what it was supposed to do, which is switch to the worship scene because that particular audio input that it's listening to had signal that's over the defined threshold. So this is what I think is the most powerful aspect of Raven, is that because we can freely create scenes and freely create inputs and freely create rules, we can come up with all sorts of scenarios to allow Raven to automatically switch from scene to scene without requiring any human interaction. So I hope you learned some things from watching this video. See you in the next one.